Inflation surged 6.8% in November. What does this mean for you? What does this mean for crypto? And what does this mean for the future? We're going to get to all of this. But before we do, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and maybe even set alerts. Just smash the like button. I'm not asking for much. I'm wearing a pink beanie. It's not going to be crazy, but we're going to get into the new inflation numbers. But first, let's roll the intro.
The older you do get, the more rules are gonna try to get you to follow. You just gotta keep living, man. Livin.
So the inflation numbers are in. What does this mean for you? We're going to dive into all of this. So let's get right into it because there's a number of things that I want to tackle. First off, inflation, what this means for you, what these numbers actually suggest, because inflation for me is different than inflation for you. We have different types of purchases that we do, and we're going to get into all this. So let's just dive right into it. News came out just this morning about inflation, 6.8% in November. This is the fastest since 1982. A lot of articles are going on this. So this is the Consumer Price Index, which is a bucket of goods. What does this include? Are they finessing the numbers? We're going to dive into that. But now, so this was just out of literally 29 minutes ago. This is early. This is fresh off the press. And we've been hearing this inflation is transitory, and now they're kind of going back on that. They're saying, hey, maybe it isn't transitory, maybe it's here to stay. But 6.8%, highest since 1982. This is really has to be at least somewhat concerning. Now, I think it's critical to go into what actually makes up the Consumer Price Index. So this is according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? So it's a bucket. Let's just go to the definition. It's a measure of average change over time of prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. So these are just different goods, and you can take a look at what change is in certain industries, because they don't really want to tell you this either, because they want to give you this bucket number. But inflation for me and you is different because we're buying different things. Inflation is on an individual level, but this is trying to just take an high level overview. For example, if you spend a lot of money on your food, but not necessarily energy, maybe inflation's a little better for you. But controversially, if there's a lot of commuting, if there's a lot of need for energy, inflation is really hurting you. So coming into this, so here's all the items is at about 6.8%. Food is 6.1%. Energy is 33.3%. All items less food. So just diving into these numbers, because personally I'm curious. Food at home 6.4%, and food away from home 6%. So this is crazy, right? So when you're going to buy food anywhere, you should be expecting to pay 6% more than you were paying last year. Let that sink in, right? That grocery store trip that used to cost you $100 now is $106, and that if it was $200, $212, and this is again general numbers, right? So let's go back to this, and now let's look at energy. So energy for commodities, 57%. Now I don't drive anywhere. I Uber, which frankly Uber prices have gone up. I would love to see an Uber chart for this. But so looking at commodities, looking at services, so electricity, natural gas. So let's just say you're paying for electricity, another 6%. Like all of these things are caked in. And the problem with inflation is that the people that feel it are the people that are kind of scrapping at the bits, trying to go live paycheck by paycheck. And the difference between $100 and $106, the difference between $200 and $212 makes a significant difference. And one of the American dreams that we like to talk about is owning a home. And so what is inflation like for owning a home? Well, the housing market just keeps getting worse for buyers. Prices haven't gone up this fast in the last 45 years. So it's getting harder and harder to buy a home, and inflation's increasing, and that gap between the people that wanted to purchase homes, it's getting farther and farther. So now this is an American dream that we've been pitched to. It's just getting less and less realistic. And this is a problem that's going on, and these big businesses, these big entities are gobbling up real estate. The BlackRocks of the world are just buying all of the real estate, and then the people are just going to be renters, and we're just living in this world, this ecosystem that is fine for the people at the top, but the inflation numbers are making our dollars weaker and weaker. And this comes, we're going to get into why this is so important for crypto. But before we get into that, I think it's important to acknowledge, okay, sure, inflation's getting higher, but how is wages? What are wages looking like? Are we making more money? And I don't know. I'll open the question for everybody. Comment below. Did your employer give you an inflation raise? Comment below if your employer gave you an inflation raise, because I doubt they did. And what we're seeing is we are seeing increasing in wages, right? So here's a look at wages are up, but inflation cancels out these gains. So wages are up about 5.1%, but with inflation, this is as of October, right? So these numbers are obviously worse now, because this 5.1%, now we're looking at this 6.8%. So, but we're making more money, but inflation is making these wages less. So you're actually making less money, and your dollar's also getting weaker. So not only are you making less money, but also all of the money that you have stored is becoming less value. Let's say it was 1-to-1, right? Let's say you were making the same amount of money as inflation. So say it was tied to that, right? That doesn't account for your assets or your money that's stored that is losing value. If you had $100,000, that's now 6% less valuable in high level, right? High level stuff here. So wages, not only are wages not increasing without inflation, you're losing money as inflation goes up. And so what's going on? Well, we're also seeing all-time highs of asset prices. Look no further than the S&P 500. Now, like every other day, we're seeing all-time highs of the S&P 500, and this helps the wealthy. This helps the people that have these assets and have their money in place. Now, I'm talking about all these things that where the inflation numbers, they're coming in and they're higher, and people were saying, oh, inflation's transitory and it's not going to be that bad, but it's just continue to get worse. And that's what happens when you print like 40% of the money supply in the past 18 months. That's what happens when these things occur. You don't just do this and then have no ramifications in terms of the consumer, the people. And that's what are we concerned of? We have no control of this. Sure, you can speak out, but you don't have any control in the inflation rates. At the end of the day, that's just the fact of the matter. But what do you have control in? You have control in what skill sets you have. You have control in where you actually allocate your money. Of course, this isn't France advice, not France advice. Like this video, this isn't France advice, but you can learn skill sets, right? So what are the top 10 skills for employees? Data science, AI, UX design, web development, blockchain programming. And we're talking about all of these things in the incubator. Literally all of these things we're talking about. We're talking about crypto developing. We're talking about UI, UX design. We're talking about marketing. It's not on here, but social media, content delivery, that is a super in-demand skill set. So what can you do to prepare yourself for the future such that these inflation numbers, such that these things, you can be more resilient than the government printing money, the government making it go burr. Like, you can be more resilient and learning these skill sets. So if you're not part of the Incubator Discord, I suggest you join that, which is linked below, because we're learning about blockchain programming. I'm a full stack engineer myself. This makes you more valuable. This allows you to do these things. And then you can start making money, and that can appreciate at a greater rate than that of inflation. And now what else can you do? You can decide where you want to put your money rather than having it sit in this fiat currency that has historically only depreciated in value. Now, what are the options here? Well, of course, we're going to talk about cryptocurrency, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin. What does Bitcoin do? Bitcoin has a fixed supply. There's only 21 million that's ever going to be in existence, and a large portion of that has been lost, a large portion. So it's even less than 21 million, but there's a fixed supply. And what this fixed supply means that over time, when you denominate your wealth in Bitcoin, your purchasing power has only increased. So let's say you had a dream home, and 5 years ago, the price of that dream home was 1,000 Bitcoin. But Bitcoin has appreciated at a greater rate than almost any other asset. So now that 2 years ago, that dream home might have been 500 Bitcoin. Now it might be 100 Bitcoin. So your purchasing power with Bitcoin and with a lot of specific cryptocurrencies increases with time rather than depreciating in time like the US dollar. So consider these things. Where do you want to store your money? In something, a fixed asset. This isn't France advice. There's other cryptocurrencies, not specifically Bitcoin, Ethereum. All these things provide value, but Bitcoin specifically, right? It's a fixed amount. It's a fixed quantity. And the purchasing power of that asset has only increased in time, whereas the dollar, that's not been the case. And this is, as we're seeing the 6.8% inflation year over year, people, 6.8% inflation. What is this? I'm concerned about this. Obviously, I'm concerned about this. Why? Well, let me grab this. Here is a framing of the Venezuelan ruble. So the bolivar, the Venezuelan bolivar. Now, what happened with this, and why do I have it framed? Well, there is hyperinflation in Venezuela that made the purchasing power of this currency basically useless, worth nothing. And when I was in Bitcoin Miami last year, there was a truckload of these dollars, and they were just throwing around. Why? Because they're worthless and they have no value. And I got it framed as just a warning. And this is what can happen when governments have uncontrolled money printing and monetary easing, whatever they're doing. And that's what happens over time. And that is a cautionary tale. I don't know, and I don't think we're getting there in the US, but it's something to keep in mind because these things can happen. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like this video and welcome to the Incubator. We talk about preparing for the future and the skill sets that you can actually have such that this 6.8% inflation, which sucks, you can be more resilient than that. You can control your future. You can gain skill sets. You can learn about crypto, which is helping prepare and is appreciating more than that of any other asset. So you can prepare for the future and overperform that of inflation. And that's about learning and understanding these things. So make sure to like this video. And if you're not part of the Incubator Discord, I suggest you join. As always, everybody, let's keep it moving, and I'll see you in the Incubator.
Well, I got thoughts that circle all around my head, and no one knows I'm thinking, but it doesn't matter, 'cause no one wants to listen. But now I'm talking, I'll be talking till I'm dead. I know what you've been missing.